I'm not here to say if spiritual warfare is real or not. That's beyond what I can comprehend. But I do know that if I can see someone as a human, and if the Spirit works with me to then see it as manageable and mentionable, or mentionable and then manageable, a lot of things can happen without othering each other.
Welcome to The Well, where we get together and talk about life, death, and everything in between. My name is Pastor Carrie, and my favorite musical note is B flat.
My name is Pastor Tim, and my favorite member of the Birds is David Crosby.
My name is Jay, and my favorite snow activity is snowshoeing.
Nice, all right. And then our other brave member, say hello to Mel. Hey, Mel.
Hi, Mel.
How's it going? Good. Mel lives down at the bottom of this well where we gather, and he's been living there for a long, long time. And he has gathered topics that he has overheard people discussing and written them down and kept them just in case anyone ever wanted to stop by and have a good conversation. Right, Mel? So he's going to lend us some topics today, and we'll dig into them and see where we can go. All right? Mel, you ready to get us our first topic? All right, here we go.
See
Here we are.
what Mel's got.
Oh, there we go. Kind of
Right.
crooked there.
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
I just saw the first
You saw
word.
the first word, didn't you? Is demon possession a real thing, or can this be explained as a psychological state or mental illness?
Okay. I don't know.
Sometimes that's the best answer, isn't it?
I think that there are definitely mental illnesses that might present themselves in similar ways to what people might be tempted to classify as demon possession. And I don't know if there's anything more than that. I don't pursue it. I don't study it. I don't think about it. Paul says, put your mind on those things that are good, those things that are edifying, those things that are fulfilling, right? So I don't know, but I also don't let those kinds of wonderments and thoughts, I don't think about them that much. I try not to.
I also don't know. There may be some relationship to them. I mean, a lot of things that Jesus healed might, when we look at like leprosy, it was a much broader, expansive than just the disease leprosy. There are many skin conditions, but I'm getting into this thinking that maybe, yes, in some cases, but I think back to early in my career, I had a person who felt that their domicile was demon possessed and they couldn't handle it and they were having a really difficult struggle. So, in talking with the other pastors, we thought it would be the best thing to do a blessing of her apartment. So I went through, I did a blessing of her apartment, did the entire blessing service that's in our book of worship, and went around and did that for her. And after that, the problem was gone. Now, I'm not going to say that I removed a demon. I'm not going to say I didn't remove a demon. I'm going to say pastorally, in a pastoral care manner, I helped her deal with a situation that she was having a very hard time dealing with. And I'll leave the spiritual warfare up to Jesus. So, but yeah, it's an experience that I had, and it brought healing to the person who needed it. And so I'm not going to question what happened. I just know the person was in a better place after that.
Spoiler alert for Jay, our friend who's in seminary. They don't tell you the answer to this question in seminary. And I even tried to ask people.
And they
Yes.
don't go
They will
there.
not
They don't
answer
go
this
there.
question. Just so if you're waiting for that, at least in my experience, it did not arrive.
There is no demon possession 101 at seminary.
There is not.
It's an elective everybody signs up for.
Let's put it this way: stewardship class was better attended.
So you're saying I know as much now as I'm gonna know then. No, for me, trying to be careful how I name this, because I want to be. I mentioned my past and the way I grew up a lot, and I don't want to put blame on that for everything. I was first and foremost, I was raised by really understanding and listening parents who were part of my journey to get to where I am now, and also the form of theology in the area I grew up in was different than how I believe now, so when I look back and I hear the word spiritual warfare or demon possession, I think of the way it was talked about back then, and frankly, that was one of the reasons that I didn't feel right. And from my perspective, it felt like it was used as an excuse to not, at the end of the day, to not care for each other at times. And again, I'm trying to be careful. I'm not trying to judge. But I get concerned sometimes that we can just put labels on things to kind of have it not be our problem, quote unquote. And I think, I know this isn't an answer for every situation, but I think a lot of times, like, I've been with people when they've had mental breaks, and it's really weird and it's really scary. And guess what? If it's weird and interesting and scary for me, it's really weird and interesting and scary for them. And so for me to be like, oh, there's a demon possessing you, is not helpful. To walk alongside and be with them and be present in their life during that moment, and vice versa. Someone, for when you're feeling things, maybe it's not a mental break, but I mean, whatever that is, to not just put a label on it and be like, well, you need more Jesus in your life, versus what is Jesus calling me to do in this moment? How, I just think that's, maybe I'm skirting around the answer, but I would say at the end of the day, to answer the question itself, we'll go 3 for 3. I don't know. I don't think knowing would change that. I still think that we shouldn't just put labels on it. We should care for the person for what they're going through. Realize you can have Jesus and a therapist too, or whatever it is, right? I just think it's deeper than that. So maybe I circled a little there, but
It's quite a way to start.
yeah, I don't know whose Mel is listening to as they cross the well, but man, they've got some things going on.
Yeah, Mel says they do. Yeah, I bet. All right, shall we try another one, Mel? Here we go.
See, I don't know. Should Mel go deeper in the well or less?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe less deep. All right, it seems like he's got something he thinks is gonna. It's stuck. There we go. Okay. Oh my gosh, you guys. That's too good.
Oh boy.
It's too good. When something goes awry, some Christians will explain that it is spiritual warfare.
What? Okay, can I...
Guys, there's a lot of topics in this well, I'm just saying.
Can we just name that there are like at least 100, 125 of these
There's
in
more
this
than 100.
in this thing?
Yeah.
What? Okay.
All right. Wow. When something goes awry, some Christians will explain that it is spiritual warfare. When, if ever, do you believe this is an appropriate explanation?
What?
It's almost like they're like, the powers of the well were like, your answers to that demon question weren't good enough. Let's go a little deeper.
Let's hit you with another angle.
Yeah, exactly.
A church that I had participated in was part of the um, um, what was it, the Pentecostal movement of the Lutheran Church. Um, and maybe it was the time, late 80s, early 90s, everything was spiritual warfare. And what I discovered, and what I discovered is if somebody disagrees with my position, especially it came up a lot with politics, that was spiritual warfare. And I'm hearing that again today. People claiming things like racial justice, that they're doing terrible demonic spiritual warfare and we need to fight against them, which is completely the opposite of what scripture would be. And so I think it's often used to discredit, dehumanize my opponent by saying I'm involved in spiritual warfare. And if I'm a good Christian, my opponent must be demonic. And so now I can dehumanize them. I can do what I want with them. That's how I saw it being used. So I do not think it's appropriate. I think it's a way of dehumanizing the other so I can go after them. And the more and more I saw it, the more and more it bothered me. That those claiming spiritual warfare were, in a way, doing exactly what they were claiming against. They were trying to belittle another, at least my experience of this, belittle another so that they did not have to care for them, did not have to love them, did not have to see them as human. That was my experience with that. Now, I'm not saying that was everybody in that church. I love that church. It sent me to seminary. It was a great place, but there were some folks that really pulled that card. And it was pulled on me after I went to seminary by not members of the church, but other people associated with it when I came out with some statements that they didn't like. It's really easy to call another demonic. Demonic. Sorry.
Yeah, I So my first initial thought was kind of the end of the last question for me. I'd rather walk alongside someone really hard. I don't mean this in like a holier than thou sense, but just follow Jesus. Jesus didn't worry about those that were othered and seen as that's actually intentionally who Jesus talked to and spent time with. So I'm actually thinking of a quote, and Pastor Carey, I'm sorry if I can put you on the spot for a minute because I'm hoping, because I don't want to take my phone out during the podcast, so I'm hoping maybe you can help me remember this quote.
It's a quiz.
But when I get lost on things like this, I tend to find myself going to Mr. Rogers, and the paraphrase of the quote is that if something is mentionable, manageable. How does that go roughly?
Yeah, if it's human, it's mentionable, and if it's mentionable, it can be manageable.
Yes, and thank you so much.
Beautiful.
That is the quote that actually popped in my mind. I just couldn't say it out loud. That popped in my mind when you read the question. Was, I think, again, I just think it's a sense of othering things or whatnot. But if we can see our humanness and we can mention it, and then we can manage it. And I'm not here to say if spiritual warfare is real or not. That's beyond what I can comprehend. But I do know that if I can see someone as human, and if the Spirit works with me to then see it as manageable and mentionable, or mentionable and then manageable, a lot of things can happen without othering each other. And maybe I've just, in my experience again that I've mentioned earlier, spiritual warfare has been a way to kind of other people in my experience in life. So Mr. Rogers is just got answers for things that I don't. So I don't know. That's where my mind went.
Thanks be to God for Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I'm in.
A great theologian.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. I have a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, I think I don't know if it's just our North American culture or if it's wider than that, but we tend to see things in the metaphor of war. And I,
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I, I, I can't prove this, but I think it has something to do with the patriarchy. And so we tend to see lots of things that we go through as a war. We're fighting things, right? I also don't love the term prayer warrior, right? Because I don't, yeah, Jesus calls us to love. Jesus reminds us of grace. Jesus takes the dagger out of Peter's hand, right? Um, and when Jesus was alive, and then I feel like still all these years after his death and resurrection, we are still making him this warrior king when he said over and over again, I am not a kind of king like you know a king. I am not a warrior king, right? I am not the warrior Messiah. So that's one um, uh, thought on spiritual warfare. The other thought is, I think that a lot of it goes back to apocalyptic literature, which is something that existed a long time ago. It was a very popular genre of literature. And we have tended to take some of that literature and then taken it really literally. And that I'm not saying it wasn't literal for its time and its place, but we can also sort of take it out of its context and use it in ways that maybe it wasn't originally meant to be used. And that was where people pictured when things were terrible here on earth, they pictured things also being terrible in this heavenly realm, right? And so they pictured the bad guys and good guys are fighting down here, right? So bad guys and good guys must be fighting up in the heavenly realms too. And nothing good is going to happen down here until the bad guys are defeated up in the heavenly realms, and then the heaven is going to come down. And it's like, right, it's this whole kind of like story, way to see your circumstances that people in ancient times, especially around the intertestamental times, right before Jesus was born, how they needed to think of their circumstances. So I don't know that that genre is particularly useful for us in our circumstances, and I don't know if people really understand sort of where the ideas actually came from. But they're not ubiquitous. We don't. Not everyone thinks that that's true.
I think the modern version of that should be left behind.
Oh, right.
Right.
Which it is.
Well,
Yeah.
it should be. We should leave it behind us.
Yes, we should.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
'Cause
Pastor Gary, I just want to thank you for naming that.
Oh,
Yes.
That's really important. A lot to think about too.
yeah. I mean, it's part of our need to name good and bad, right? It's part
Right.
of our need to
Yep.
be good and name the other bad.
Mm.
And I think it's. I'm sorry to say, I think it's kind of like we talked about. Maybe the easy way out. Instead of caring
Yeah.
for each other, we can demonize each other.
Exactly.
Right.
And this kind of thing makes it really easy, and we can really justify it, right? We can be super, super right and righteous. And I think anytime we feel that way, we should probably be a little suspicious of why we're feeling that way. Why am I so right?
Yeah.
Because maybe I'm misunderstanding something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Usually when we think we have things the most figured out is we're about to fall. Right.
Mhm, exactly.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Do you think we can go 3 for 3 here, Mel? What do we
I
have
wouldn't
planned
tempt.
here?
I wouldn't tempt Mel right now. Ooh.
No, you shouldn't have it. All right, here he goes. Out of the hundreds and hundreds,
What do you
literally.
think of the Left Behind?
All right. Oh, that one looks, well, sometimes you
Yeah,
don't
well-
know. Sometimes the larger paper, okay, it's not.
Joseph Campbell said the fairy tale of happiness ever after cannot be taken seriously. It belongs to the neverland of childhood. How would you respond?
Well, so we took a big turn.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
The fairy tale of happiness ever after cannot be taken seriously. belongs to the Neverland of childhood. So this one, oh man,
You're
sorry,
treading on the land of Disney. Be careful.
I'm going to be honest with you three in the room, and of course when this gets recorded to everybody else. But this one's making me a little emotional for some reason. It's hitting me a little personally because of some things that I've just worked through, and I don't mean this in a centering way, but it does hit me personally because I'm a very, very overtly expressive person in both my joy, happiness, and sensitivity. And one of my seminary courses was big on inviting the authenticity of yourself to come out. And so when I read this, I was like, oh, well, I was bearing that as a fairy tale for years, and just within weeks have learned that I was doing that. And the reason it gets emotional is I as a youth director, having the opportunity to work with specifically in my role with youth 6th grade through 12th grade, I watch them see. Let me back up. I see them or watch them feel like they need to start seeing this idea of happiness as a fairy tale, and I'm in the real world now. It's saddening. And I think part of it is, we talk a lot about like happiness versus joy. And I think happiness can be fleeting at times, but I don't think that to be able to feel overt joy or happiness is something we need to hide as we get into the real life or see it as something that's just a fairy tale. On the same side, or on the same topic, I do think that where this true happiness comes from is a sense of honesty and vulnerability too. I think I feel much more truly happy when I am in places, in spaces, and this is true for me with my relationship with Steph. Steph offers a place in space where I can be vulnerable and say how I feel, and it might be a really hard thing, but because I'm in that place, there's a sense of true happiness there. That's not necessarily the way that this would be like fairy tale, but I think sometimes we can disregard it and just call it fairy tale and be like, oh, we just have to live real life. So I don't know. I'm circling again, but I hope we don't let go of that kind of. I've watched it myself and others, being a youth director, like I said, to feel like we have to let go of that kind of thing. And I hope that we have a sense of honesty and vulnerability about life, but also that sense of honesty and vulnerability allows us to still have that type of happiness. So I don't know. I've talked way too long, but
I can't help but also think of your journey with Santa.
Yes.
I thought of that as you were answering that too.
Yes.
Which that question is hang in the air. We can all think about our own journeys with Santa, right?
Yes.
Jesus said, "Let the children come to me, for but because to such as these belong the kingdom," right? And you must become like one of these if you are ever to enter the kingdom, right? And if we think of the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God as something that's available here on earth now to us every second of every day, we think, well, maybe we should listen to that advice, that take what's complex and make it simple. And I'm going to bring Mr. Rogers back again because I feel like he does a really good job of that. He doesn't whitewash things, right? In his children's program, he doesn't say that bad things don't happen or don't exist. He doesn't, when he speaks with children with different abilities, he doesn't pretend like they're just the same as everyone else, right? But underlying all of that is I think a foundation of joy, like you were saying, Jay, right? It's to live out of that joy, to live out of that gratitude, is a happiness ever after, right? I mean, it's something that you can that you can choose to live in. I don't know. If you've ever known someone like that who just lives out of this place of joy, who just lives out of this place of gratitude, but it is available. It's something that's available to each one of us. So it might be something that we say that we tell children in children's stories, but I think as we get older, it might get a little more complex, but I don't think it goes away.
Yeah.
I'm I'm really struggling with this. We had a women's study at my last church called like the happiness quotient or something, where a lady wrote a book about how we need to be happy. And in my reflections of my life, happiness has eluded me.
Mm.
Even as a child, I didn't quite understand what was happy. I think that's why I was a class clown, trying to make others happy. But I've never really understood happily ever after. I think that's why I'm like a moth attracted to people like Jay. It's just like, how? And I know this isn't a self-help thing, but I can understand Joseph Campbell saying this.
Mhm.
And I wish I didn't.
Mm.
I do have joy and I do have hope, but I'm often a little bit maybe darker.
Mm.
There was an old cartoon character, I can't remember who it was, where a black cloud hung over him. I think it was in Little Abner all the time. Yes, I'm that old. And, that's how I kind of always felt that, maybe tomorrow will be a happy day. I don't, I don't understand that well. So my idea of joy is even when you're not happy, you
Mm.
still have joy in the presence of the love of God in that. So
Mhm.
I like hearing what Jay has to say because I don't really relate. And I know this sounds tough, but maybe there's others like me out there that don't quite. I was never a big fan of fairy tales. I kind of,
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but I like Old Yeller where it ends realistic. The dog dies. I mean, it's terrible, but
Well, I think too. Um, on this, I know, Doug, we're starting to hit time here, but I do think that we say this is the well where we talk about life, death, and everything in between, and I think the answer to this question, whether there's some themes, we also had three very different answers, and I think that's important to realize that, we all talk a lot, we plan a lot of things together, we come from very similar theological backgrounds, but at the end of the day, like, we all have our own humanity, and those that listen are going to relate to us in different ways too. And I don't know, this question just made me like, that's important. Yeah, and also,
definitely.
like, at the end of the day, Mr. Rogers still comes through.
Absolutely.
So go, Mr. Rogers. No, I'm just kidding.
I think that's also why I loved watching Mr. Rogers as a kid. Well, because it was again that flame I was attracted to.
Mm.
Mr. Rogers trivia, fun fact. When he was at the dinner table with his family, if he ever had to say something kind of like a little bit like snarky or off color, he would always say it in Lady Elaine Fairchild's voice.
Really?
Yes.
As if I couldn't love this human being anymore.
I know.
What?
Isn't that amazing? His wife tells that story. I mean, rest her soul when she was still alive. She told that story. Yeah.
What?
God bless these humans.
Great,
I
right?
would love to have had just one dinner with that couple.
I know.
Just once.
Isn't that great?
I
She talks a lot
love-
about how like there's nothing perfect about him, right? And
Right.
He was perfectly human.
Which I
And
think is
everything
which is
that
beautiful.
means. It is beautiful.
But I think that's why, like, I mean, look at the three of us from completely different
Totally.
aspects of life, like, appreciate and look up to him. And I think part of it is because he wasn't perfect, never claimed to be.
No.
We should do we should do a whole Mr. Rogers episode with just Mr. Rogers quotes. There's a lot of them.
Doug.
I could do that.
Writing it down.
Brilliant. That would be so joyful.
Yes.
All right. I think Jay has a recipe for us today.
I do.
Okay.
And so yeah, I think I got some cups there for everybody.
Thank you. Look at this.
So this is
Smells really good.
this is called apple Snickers salad.
Salad.
Yeah, I know. And so you know what's
I
really
love the
cool?
definition of salad.
You know what's super cool? When you go in the St. Luke's 2004 blue cookbook
the blue.
and you go into the salad section, it's in there. And you know, there's just
It's healthy, Mom.
like make sure you eat your salads. I am. So so here's the deal with this. It's called apple Snickers salad, and the title has 2 of the 3 ingredients right in it. It's literally apples, Granny Smith apples, Snickers, and we went healthy with the recipe asks us to go healthy, so it's light whipped topping. But anyways, that's all it is, and you know it brings me back actually. So it's from the St. Luke's cookbook, but there were 2 people specifically at my previous congregation that I served in Minnesota. That every time we would do potlucks, I don't know, probably 4 times a year. And there were 2 people that would always bring this, and they would each make it a little differently and like have this like kind of back and forth about which way was better. But I followed the recipe from the book on this one. Just did the 3 ingredients the way they say and put them together.
It tastes a little bit like deconstructed caramel apple. I mean, right? Because I guess that's what a Snicker bar is, right? Yeah. That is with whipped cream on it.
Right.
If a caramel apple had whipped cream on it, and why wouldn't it? Can you think of any good reason why it wouldn't?
This is proving why it would work. You know, I'm just gonna say, like, in all reality, this probably really shouldn't taste that good. But
Did you say the recipe specifically called for Granny Smiths?
Yeah.
Because I love the Granny
sour
Smiths.
makes
The
it
sour is really good. Like I'm
yeah, Granny
impressed.
Smith is a big game changer, I think, because it would be just overwhelmingly sweet otherwise.
Right.
Call for a light whip topping.
That's what I put on it.
Is it like Cool Whip?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Cool hip.
Cool hip.
I like it. I don't know, 5 for what it is. Like
It's
delicious
unabashedly
combo.
what it is.
Delicious.
It is so much better than it has any business being.
That's
Right.
true.
Yeah, I'll go 4.5. It's just
Being healthy today, I ate all my salad.
It's kind of hard to stop eating it.
yeah.
Like I'm having
I didn't.
down the.
I'm probably just gonna keep eating it, to be honest.
Because every time, like I want another one of those apples.
It's a 5.
Good.
It shouldn't be. It's ridiculous.
So we talk about how Jay, you have a sweet tooth. I have a killer sweet tooth too.
Mhm.
And the pace at which sweets in my house are consumed is so different between people. I will just toss back candy bars with zero regard for my health. And Megan and Jude are not those people. They'll choose popcorn over a sweet all day long. And so Megan has had this king size Snickers bar that has been sitting in our pantry for 2 weeks now. And I look at it every single day. I'm like, oh, that looks so good. I'm not going to touch it. It's hers. And this is just satisfied that need 5.
Nice. You could make it into the salad.
You know what's interesting, Doug?
they would
There's
like it.
2 extra Granny Smith apples.
Oh.
And I'm just saying, get yourself some light whipped topping, and you're there, man.
I love the
You know,
simplicity.
my mom used to buy Snickers bars and have them last like 5 days. She would cut it into 5 pieces and bake
no.
a piece. I never could get.
Okay, well, I have a God moment for us today. In 2011, Matt and I and Ellie moved down to Texas, and where we lived in our neighborhood, we lived with very few people who had lived somewhere other than Texas, especially our across the street neighbors. And we were having dinner with them one night, and I was somehow, it must have been the winter, and I was explaining to them about snow. And like they had, it's like not they didn't know what snow was, right? But I was explaining to them what it's like to live with snow, right? Because it's not just, you don't just look at it. I mean, it's something that like, you know, when you live in a snowy climate, it affects a whole bunch of stuff that you do. So I was explaining to them that when it snows overnight, you must get up a little earlier and then go out and shovel the snow off of the sidewalk and the driveway before you can leave. And I'll never forget the gentleman of the couple looked at me and just said, I would never do that. I would never do that. I would move the next day. Like if that had ever happened to him, he would move. It's just like, it was just so much beyond anything that he could comprehend. Well, I thought of that story because this morning we needed to be here at church a little bit early, and it snowed last night, not only last night, but yesterday as well. And my husband just had hand surgery. And so it was my job to get up early before I had coffee, get out and shovel the driveway. And so I was thinking about that as I was doing it. And I was like, oh man, he was right. I should, this is bad.
This is terrible.
Why does anybody do this? And then, so, I did that, and let's face it, the coffee tasted a little bit better once I got inside, right? It was nice and cozy, and I was cold. That was kind of awesome. But then as I was making my way to the church, roads are slippery. It's kind of crazy out there, lots of people. And I drove by a man who was obviously taking a break doing his shoveling, talking with a neighbor who had taken a break doing her shoveling. And they just had this sort of really lovely sort of smiles on their faces of the humor of the situation, that here we all are out here once again, shoveling our driveways, and we had to get up early. But there was a certain camaraderie that I feel like I saw between them and in their eyes that I feel like is one of the warm things that brings us together in these sort of northern climes, is that we're connected to each other in some of these circumstances. Like, what are you going to do? We have to have a sense of humor about shoveling, because what else can we do? We still have to do it. So my God moment was that realization of the community that we have and build in circumstances that we would, if we had a choice, not have them, right? I would have rather not shoveled this morning. But sometimes the Holy Spirit works like that. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you for journeying to the well with us. May God's peace go with you.
The Well is a podcast of St. Luke's ELCA in Middleton, Wisconsin. You can follow for new episodes airing every other Thursday on St. Luke's website, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to drop a question in The Well, you can dive over to stlukes-elca.org/thewell and submit your questions there. The Well is sponsored by the St. Luke's Foundation. The foundation is dedicated to leaving a legacy for future generations. You can learn more by heading to stlukes-elca.org/foundation. The Well is edited by Jimmy Patton and produced by Doug Castle. Thanks for listening. We'll meet you next time here at The Well.